Hello. Greetings. Happy Monday. Happy election day for those of us who are in Ghana. It's a good day because there was no work today. And again, it's December, so hardly working, but anyway. So yes, thank you so much for those of you who have been joining. Fear not, it's the same person. I just thought I'd switch it up on you. But yeah, so we're continuing discussing the tenets of Build Black Globally. And it's been really cathartic for me. I think I said this in the last video, just to put all this out here, and also just to reflect a little bit more on does what I was thinking almost 3 years ago actually make sense. And I feel like the older I get, the more sense it makes. Actually, yeah, this is it for me. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. So we talked about the 5 tenets. The first one being build community. The first one being build trust, which is about information asymmetry. The second one being about building community, which is about building networks. The third one about building resources, which is databases, platform, where's the information, where are we gathering, how do we facilitate that. The fourth one being wealth and value chains. And the final one is actual space. How do we build monuments to honor who we are? And I see monuments, obviously we think of monuments as statues that sit somewhere and hold the history of something and that are regarded, as prominent or useful in terms of history, in terms of whatever stories they're telling, etc. But I like to expand the idea of monuments to include other types of structures which pay an homage to cultural relics. So for example, a museum is a monument. Certain type of stores are monuments. I think of Makula Market in Ghana as a kind of monument. It is almost like a tribute to economic way in a tropical country, being open air, being super crowded. It moves really quickly, but at the same time doesn't, right? There's some mainstays, but you dare not get in the way. There's something almost monument-like. And plus when you come to Ghana, you have to go to Makula. It's an experience. Even though you've been to open air markets, whether it's Makula or Kejitia, wherever you go, you have to have that bustling African market experience. So I see that as a monument. For me, what might actually look like is a space I think of some places like Busboy and Poet, again, Ethos Club, places that are monuments to Afro-diasporan ideas, culture, conversations, things like that. And the reason why monuments are important is because they represent a physical structure, a physical manifestation of an otherwise abstract concept, right? If I am constantly telling you a story, it's kind of like the game of telephone. I tell you. Over time, the story changes, it evolves, it takes on new characters, the plot thickens, or thins, it's just so many things can change. But a monument feels like a intentional, long-standing homage to a specific story. And especially in the Black and the African way, where a lot of storytelling is oral and is passed on through auditory means, or sometimes visually, it's helpful for us to have these physical structures. And I think what that could look like is a shop, restaurant, discussion space, stage. It can look a lot of ways. It could be a theater, but just do we have enough monuments that are permanent, as permanent as anything can be on this earth, but permanent fixtures of the places that we occupy? I know that in the United States, there was a lot of controversy over pulling down certain monuments that felt like they were honoring parts of our history that would otherwise be treasonous or seen as, just like not honoring who we are as, let's say, Americans, or the American ideology of freedom for all or justice for all. And so somebody will say, well, if we pull it down, then we're erasing that this thing happened. Maybe we should leave it up and put, an asterisk in the context. Others are saying, no, like, let's erase it altogether. There's no reason that should be honored visually for people to continually be reminded of it. And others still are like, well, this is a part of my personal and specific geographic history. And so even if it was a problem, it is still something that happened and deserves its space. And I think that African and Afro-diasporan and ADOS and Caribbean ideas, thoughts, events deserve to hold that kind of space. Like, if I think about it, I mentioned here in Ghana, Makula, and I know in the United States, the country is littered with, or is littered a bad, or is there are numerous monuments to civil rights figures, things like that. And then obviously you have the museums, right? Like Blacks and Wax Museum, now, the National Museum of African American Art, History. But, I think, and then, when you go to other places, I know that, in France, for example, they have Black tours, like Noir France, like tours of Black places where during the Harlem Renaissance, Black writers and things of that nature stayed and, had discussions, and like where that whole period was happening in France. So these monuments and structures exist, but are they prominent enough? Are they an important enough part of the global discourse on, on history, on markets, on anything, right? When people are talking about history, are those things included? When people are talking about current contributions, are those things included? Like, are they isolated? Are they limited, for example, to Black History Month and like a certain period of the year? Or is this a constant reminder that like these people were here, these people contributed, these people are still contributing, their contributions are so valuable that these monuments deserve to continually exist? And I do want to keep in mind that when I say monuments, I'm not just talking about structures like, like monuments, what we think of monuments as structures, but I'm talking also about shops. I'm talking about types of experience that make their way in physical spaces, festivals, parades. We're seeing, I remember, going when I was in Louisiana and participating in like second lines during the Mardi Gras festivities, and specifically what I found very interesting for me was like going to a Catholic church, right? And we all, I think, have a specific idea of how Catholic churches go. You stand up, sit down, very solemn, very quiet, very, sad, morose, like, solemn, yes, solemn. But this Catholic church in New Orleans was not solemn. And that second line, they had a second line all up and through that congregation, and plus it was Super Bowl Sunday. So it was Super Bowl Sunday, it was Mardi Gras, and so and it was like, I think the Saints were playing, or like they had made it to or something, and so it's like it was just like and I felt like this is a moment that might feel abstract, because like, how do you build a monument around like a second line, or how do you build a monument around like the culture around Black sports or Black festivities, or even homecoming cultures, things like that. But I believe it's possible, like kind of connected to this idea of like indigenous IP and ownership of our cultural brain, things like that. We need to build towers around that, protect that, own that, ensure that continues, is transferred, etc. And that transfer process is important because, for example, here, there are a number of rites, festivals, and traditions that are carried on through the royals, like within the royal, let's say, houses or whatever, like the chieftaincies, and things like that. And to what extent does the average person, within or even outside of said villages, understand the value of and honor those festivals and what they mean for the culture, right? What happens in 20, 30, 40 years when people have stopped learning the local language, when we have stopped, learning some of this history, some of this culture, it stopped being recorded. We're saying we're a melting pot and everything is coming together. And again, culture is evolving, so it's not to say that this can't be what it is, but it's to say that will we have a monument to ensure that this ever happen? Like, will this moment kind of pass by and it'll be like, you're lying. Like, there's nothing that documents that this actually took place, and that's how I think about monuments, like making sure that there's something that says this happens, it's valuable, it's important for who we are, it's important for how we express, it's important for how we build wealth. Because I think it can be easy to think of wealth as just like the commercial aspects, right? Like, buying and selling and, the money part. But actually wealth is predicated on a lot of different things. I posted recently about, someone posted recently about how, is it Queen of the Gambit Queen? Well, anyway, the show with the lady who did chess, how it increased sales of chess, increased like books around chess, like the whole chess economy, digital chess, everything was boosted from this. And I see that as a kind of monument. Like, this movie, this thing will exist in perpetuity as a visual reminder that this moment happened. It was valuable, and its expression is producing another generation of people, let's say, who might continue to do that thing. But if we're not invested in, for example, that kind of a monument, which is, let's say, a visual film or production that showcases this moment, then it'll pass us by. We'll be like, were there ever women playing chess? Like, it can be questioned because it wasn't documented. It can be questioned because there's not a monument that honors that this thing happened. And it was important for the culture, it was important for the economy, it was important for the set of people whom it impacted. The set of, let's say, girls who felt, chess maybe is a boys' game, and now they have a reason to enter, and this was the moment that reminded them of that. It's also one of the reasons why, even though I personally have stopped watching slave movies and just movies about Black heartache, because I've done that work, I've seen the things, and I'm like, okay, on Black tragedy, I still advocate that every single year, without fail, they continue to be created, because a generation is coming that needs to see these things, that needs to be reminded that these things happen, that they existed, and that they need not be repeated, or that the relics of these things still exist in various parts of the world, in even our everyday lives, and like need that reminder. So it's like, once I've had my fill, I don't need to like over consume that, but I recognize the value for people behind me. So there are monuments to that. That's why you have the museums, you have the movies, you have the songs, you have, the shows, you have all the things that are monuments to that, and that validate your identity, your culture, whatever. So that if you're trying to build an economy around, maybe not the tragedy, but you're trying to build, yourself up from some of these things, you have something you're pulling from. Like, if someone does a movie on Madam C.J. Walker and what the value of her as a millionaire, specifically around Black beauty, means, that monument is there, right? Like, it's real, it's there. If it's her old house that people go and visit, it's there. Like, that's wealth for the people, because it's giving us cultural capital, it's giving us political capital. Hopefully there's some financial capital that accrues to the family and to the companies that benefit from her. So now it feels a little bit like I'm rambling, because I feel like this to me is like the final frontier. If you build a space that honors your identity, that honors the relationship between my identity here with your identity there, with your identity there, then the value of our culture and our cultural capital should never be questioned, should never be let's say debunked. It should always stand as a given, because there's a monument. Like, there's something that exists here currently that showcases that this is valuable. And I really want to also shout out like the commercial monuments that are starting to crop up all around the world. Like, I was in London, I went to see Black in Carnaby, which is like an all Black store in London. I was in Abidjan. There's Ivorian brand stores like Dozo Abidjan. Here we have Chapacra, we have the Lot, we have El Loco. In the States we have Nubian Human. It just excites me that we have concept stores that are monuments to our culture, to our heritage, to our capital, that exist as in a commercial entity. But all of these spaces, they host events, they teach, they do outreach, all of these things. They promote the arts, promote innovation in our communities. And this to me is it. Like, that's it. Like, building Black spaces, building monuments to ourselves and to our history. So that's the final tenet. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So hit me up.